The people in the background who are doing all the hard work of running this webinar are going to be sending me those questions so that I can get to them. And if by chance we don't get all the questions answered, then I'll make sure that I send an email with all of those answers that you're looking for. Today, it's all about transformation. What is it really? How is it different from business as usual? And what's inside the needed transformation for what we're doing now in today's world? Those elements have got to have changed, and yes, they actually have. And we're going to go through several of them. Now, one thing to set the stage is that while the COVID-19 virus accelerated all of the change and the transformation, we were already in that state as supply chain professionals and management. The tariffs that were present in the past couple years, as well as the technology changes that had predated those tariffs, all of those were causing us to have to think through our businesses differently because there was now more supply than there was demand, and the customers truly are king. That means that everything has to run slightly different, and the time to transform is now. So what I want to start with is a quote that I used 4 years ago. Oh, excuse me, the attendees are on hold. Click the entire audience to start. Can you tell me if the audience is... All right. We had a little technical difficulty, something that you may run into as you're doing your transformation. I'm going to quickly go back to the start and welcome you because I don't want to miss a single minute with you. I am to creating awe-inspiring transformation. We're going to be talking today thanks to
the broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen.
This broadcast and webinar on creating awe-inspiring transformation. As you probably saw, we had a little bit of our own tech difficulties going through. We will be talking about the tech that you may also have difficulties with. But don't worry, it's not the fact that you have problems, it's the fact that you can recover from them, that your customers are going to be watching. That's part of the transformation competency that you're going to be embedding in. I'm Dr. Cynthia Kalina-Kaminsky, President of Process and Strategy Solutions, and I want to thank ISCEA for inviting me to speak with you today. A few administrative pieces. You are on mute through this entire webinar. As you go through and questions pop into your mind, then please put them in the chat box. The people doing all of the hard work behind this webinar are going to be sending me those questions. If we can't get through all of them, then I'll be sure to send an email out. Today's whole conversation is about transformation and what it is. Let's look at a little history. We went through in the US a major transformation in the 70s and 80s when we switched from looking at using all of our machines, in other words, an operational point of view, into a process point of view, the flow. How is it that we can promise to get things out when we're not just storing it all in warehouses all over the place? We've continued to do other transformations, but they've been smaller until now. Previous to COVID-19, COVID being the piece that really pushed everything that was already going on and put it into the mainstream, not only the mainstream, but put it into the fast lane. Before that, we were dealing with tariffs on the supply chain end, so we were having to figure out how in the world to adjust to what was a constantly changing landscape. And even before that, we were having to look at those constantly changing landscapes based on the differences in technology. Now all of that is coming together, and we can start to talk about transformation for the entire company, because that is where we're at. I like to start with a quote that I used 4 years ago at an ISCEA conference, where I showed that 1 in 3 public companies will not survive the next 5 years, and that was written in 2016. Back then, we were looking at people who, or not people, but companies that were not changing based on the realities of the changing demand and supply coupling and changing in using technology for different advantages. Now we have different risks that we're also incorporating in, and we do see that that survival rate is still holding true. Not everyone is surviving. In fact, here in the US in April 2020, there was a 26% increase in commercial Chapter 11s. In other words, companies are in trouble. How in the world do they transform so that they can handle what's coming up? Well, in order to do that, you need to look at a little bit of background so that you understand where the transformational pieces that I'm talking about are based and how I'm looking at it. Jeffrey Moore, you may know him as the Crossing the Chasm guy, wrote a book called Four Zones of Winning. And this came out about the 2016 timeframe, somewhere in there. And he divided businesses into four different quadrants. In the sustaining innovation quadrants, that's where we actually make our money. Performance is the actual selling, the bringing in of that top line revenue. And notice that because online marketing and e-commerce is huge now, the lines are blurring between these different quadrants. The productivity zone just doesn't stay down there. The pieces that support us being able to bring in the top line revenue. In other words, we're making the product, we're providing the service, we've got IT, we've got qualified personnel on board. That all starts to affect not only the performance zone, but it merges and blends in different ways. The important thing that you need to know is that this is the area of continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is extremely important because we want stable systems. We want them optimized and efficient so that we can make promises about schedule, about what the quality is going to be, about how much you're going to get in what amount of time. When you're in a chaotic situation, you can't make those promises. So this becomes very important. It is the area that businesses want to be in the majority of time. But yet, when we start to look at the disruptive innovation, we have what's called an incubation zone. Now, it's not just R&D. If you are a biopharma business and you make vaccines, if you create a new vaccine to treat patients like you've never been able to treat them before and reach markets that you've never been able to, that productivity zone doesn't change very much because you're still making vaccines. The disruption that we're talking about in transformation is radical change, where you're having to change how you're doing things. When people talk about the fact that when something goes into a big business, it's a new innovative product or service, it just gets killed. It's because we're squishing it and molding it into the stable processes and systems that we already have in place. We're not acknowledging the transformative effect. We're just making it work in what we already have. What we're talking about today is a transformation. We're not making what we have work anymore. We're making new things work. The trick is that you still have to make money with what you've got and not cannibalize it while you're bringing in all of this new transformation. In addition to the R&D, we are talking about new business models. This all gets fed up into the transformation zone, which is the get it out. Usually we think about this as now we've got this brand new innovative product. It is going to change what we do. It's going to have minimally a 10% impact on our top line. And the customers are going to be attracted to it because it starts to compete in different ways. That means we need to get it out. Typically, the process that we have built in is that it goes from the R&D or the new business model concept into the transformation zone, down into the productivity because we don't want to sell something that we can't produce. We're going to cannibalize what we can produce. And then we move it up into performance and we get moving on coordinating between performance and productivity. But that's changed. The transformation zone now engulfs everything that we're doing. You may know companies that it seems all of the people inside are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to satisfy all of these customer requirements. Part of it is getting a true customer management system in place. Believe it or not, Amazon has it. You use it all the time. You feel like you're in control, but really they've designed so that they can support what they're offering you. We are transforming and sustaining at all times to get rid of the chaos from having to feel like you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. We're going to talk through how in the world you get to that point. This is the area of radical change. Yes, we used to talk across boundaries before, but now it's constant. You must have all the different viewpoints so that you can capture the nuance. Remember, there's more there's more supply than there is demand. So we have to be able to service the customer better than anyone else can service them. That means we have to do business differently. So when I started all of this, what was wanted, what did I provide, and how did this build up into the tool set that I now use with all of my clients? When I was in industry and received my very first job coming out of college, I was told to make the factory globally competitive. And that has been one of the pieces that I've consistently been doing with clients as well as businesses I've worked with. It's all about not only innovating the problems and fixing and allowing for other innovation to come in, but it's about using your supply chains and your operations to actually grow the top line revenue as well as the market share, because you can get into different places. So we are transforming the business from the operations end out. As I worked with government entities on the federal side, they wanted me to teach them how in the world the commercial world works, because that was their supply base. How do we make things happen faster? How do we bring in agile and be able to handle that with the supply chain base that we have, to be able to transfer the data back and forth so that we both know and understand and trust what each other is doing? As well, I worked with some entities where we were actually building economies, U.S. businesses into emerging countries, and making sure that we're developing trade partners. Transformational as we build the business, as we start to figure out different ways to operate. Same with academia. They needed to become competitive, and they looked to me to merge that business, engineering, and science. I have 3 degrees in engineering. The logic I use then gets embedded into how they begin to engage investors, how they start to embed commercialization into basic research so that they can be competitive as we continue along. So what we're going to go through today are looking at 2 rules for revenue growth that you must have in place in order to transform. We'll look at least 3 different cultural changes as you metamorphosize, and then the strategic performance strategy that you need. I use something called management by performance. This is different than management by objective. And we're going to talk about that critical integration of advanced technology. So let's start where we already feel familiar, in that performing and producing area. Nothing stands alone, everything is collaborative, but let's start where we feel most comfortable. As we start to talk about the changes in our operational activity, everyone uses the word flexibility, and we're talking agile. That means something different than most businesses use it to mean. It's a very difficult blend of timing, capability, capacity in order to meet our customer values, not just deliver to our customers, but meet their requirements and their values. And this is an extremely difficult performance piece to manage and to make happen. In timing, you can think of Amazon, faster, faster, faster. And yet when COVID came and they had to put in the capacity piece and the agility part, they fell apart because they were used to the one performance aspect of faster, 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 and had not adapted their supply chain or made it flexible enough to be able to handle all of the other pieces. And so you're looking at working systems and how things are working in the background. For a DoD supplier or anyone who's in a B2B supply chain, you're looking at capacity because you need to know how much you can do in what type or in what time period. And you want to get out the exact quantity at the exact right time to the right person. And you want it to pass all of the quality tests. Agility is merging these two, which means you have to have different capabilities. And the customers expect it. They don't care what goes on in your background. They just want what they want when they want it. So let's take a look at what this Agile really means very quickly. It's all about individuals and interactions over process and tools. It doesn't mean process and tools are not important. They are. They enable our ability to be able to have these relationships and to be able to communicate effectively. But they're not more important than the individuals, than the relationships, than that communication, because those top pieces are where we make our money. The rest enables, and that's how I want you to look through this manifesto. It was created by a bunch of software people because they couldn't get software out on time. And as they got it out, then it really wasn't working in the new environment that they found. What they discovered is that there was so much documentation going ahead of time, trying to make deterministic every single piece that was going to happen throughout this entire long project, that they were obsolete before they released. So what we look at is making a working deliverable that's modular so that we can actually stack them together. Each one delivers value to the customer in the customer's opinion, not in ours, and stacked together, they deliver bigger value. It binds them to you and starts to get you, it starts to develop for you a barrier to them leaving. All of this modular development and ability to adjust quickly because you're working in sprints. This collaboration means that you're embedding the customer insight, data, and in some cases the customer themselves because you're working very rapidly. It does not mean that you're working very rapidly and you release your new set of software and you say, okay, customers, now you go test it, figure out if it works. You don't get relieved of doing the testing. You have to deliver something that works. And yes, there may be some changes and nuance that has to go on. And I'm going to use that word nuance because it's going to become very important for your transformation. But the closer you can get the customer, the faster you can capture that nuance, and the faster you can get out the deliverable that they want in these sprints. That is more important than contract negotiation because you're relying on the relationship. It's not just transactional anymore. It's not just legal. You still need the contract. But now we're changing how we're doing business because we need to respond to change, whether it's changing technology or changing requirements on the customer end. If we follow that set, very solid, traditional project management plan, again, we're going to miss our mark as soon as we get it out. This allows us to be more agile, to get out things that are actually usable as soon as they leave our shop. What you need to remember is one size does not fit all. The Agile project that you run in order to set up a supply chain for one type of customer may not fit for the other, and this is very different. We're used to being able to be very efficient, which means one product runs down one line and we know the batch sizes. But if you now start to look at your customers not demographically, but in values and the requirements that they want, you may find you have to split up your supply chains into segments because you've got some customers that want a certain value add that requires setup, and you're not going to do that on a high volume line. It also starts to give you more options. Do you just build a whole new line, have two, get more customers in? You're working with two totally separate groups, so now you can develop them both out fully. Do you move one of those lines closer to where the concentration of that type of customer is? All these things are coming into play so that you can meet the values that they want. And it all starts with the strategy. We're not looking at the 3-day annual retreat so that we can build strategy. Strategy is built, yes, typically in a very intensive set, not just one weekend, but set of workshops as you go through, because it's multi-year. And then it's continuously monitored. But we're capturing things differently now. We need to capture data that shows the value the customers want so that we can make sure that our infrastructure, all of our supply chains, and all of our processes deliver the value that the customer will reward by giving us an order continuously. That means we have to understand the performance mix. I talked before about timing, that faster, 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 and perfect order fulfillment, the right everything. B2B type play. There's the agility, which is a combination of two. There are a few other high level, as well as some unique high level attributes for individual industries and types of organizations. You need to know which one is first, second, third, because that defines your trade space as you're setting up your infrastructure and as you're choosing your technology. You cannot choose the correct technology if you don't know who the customer is and you don't have a performance mix in place. That gets embedded into a strategic performance plan that starts to define what's the metric hierarchy, not just the top level KPIs, not the bellwether KPIs that are being used by someone else, but what fits for us to drive vertically and horizontally through our entire company to deliver the value the customer wants, which means we're able to act more agilely because we know what our boundary conditions are. We've embedded cross-functional and cross-business and cross-boundary into our extended supply chain, cross-everything integration by doing this. So as a whole, we're moving faster because the communication is highly focused and everybody is on the same page. We're not having to hammer out everyone's interpretation of what the strategy is. We know it. This also is combined now with the cultural constraints. We can't build something that doesn't meet the cultural constraints of how we're saying we're going to do business, because people aren't going to believe us and we're going to lose our better talent. And we'll talk about how to retain talent during this transformation. Because if all of a sudden now we're changing the entire way we do strategy, we're starting to pull everything through vertically, horizontally, everything at the same time, we need different types of talent as well as the talent that we've already got. We're looking here, what we're talking about is truly digital transformation versus conversion. Digital conversion is when you take a process and you convert it into software, but you haven't changed the business. Digital conversion means that you've got the strategy that integrates the people, the process, the tech, the metrics, the customers, the service, the culture, and you're molding all of that so that you can actually open up new markets, open up new opportunities while also serving the customer base that you want. And yes, it's that you want. You may choose, and in many cases, my customers have chosen that some of the customers they've recently brought on really don't mix with what they're delivering. And so you are going to be choosy and you're going to make more money because of it. But you need to know what you're up for. And that means we need to talk about the realities of digital transformation. Not this is the silver bullet and you go out and do it and everything's hunky-dory. We're talking an iterative process here that all starts way back from that continuous improvement work that you were doing. They know the shortcomings in the current process. They know where the frustration points are, both internally and externally, and they know where the elephants are in the room. If we're going to truly digitally transform, we need to address those elephants because they need to be, just like all risk, managed or eliminated or transformed. But we can't keep them around because then we're not going to be able to get out the value that we need. And this takes time. And yet I just said that it has to be fast because we have to be agile. And those are some of the paradoxes that we're going to be working with in this transformation. You have to have business running while you're changing your business. You have to act fast while you're acting slow. That's where the agile comes in. You're working in sprints that are defined with the appropriate documentation so everyone understands. You're measuring it against the strategy and the performance as you go so that you know that something is released and it's going to serve not only you internally, but also provide the value externally. That means it's not cheaper up front. Yes, you've got digital systems and platforms to buy into. It's not just a web of technology anymore, it's layers of technology. And you have to manage all of that, which means you're going to have people who are experts on the different systems. You're going to have people who can handle the interactions between the two. Just like any other major transformation, we're going to be changing where the people live, but we're not going to be getting rid of them, because this is all about people integrating with the technology. What that means then is that we're going to be able to open up more markets, offerings, and price points, but we won't even know what those are until we get into the transformation. As we begin to put things together and we think we know the endpoint and what it looks like, we're going to find that there's so much power in these tools and the capability that you're building that it's going to change what that endpoint looks like, and it's going to add to it, but you won't know it until you get into it. 80% of all of this work is in the transformational area. These are people who can handle uncertainty. These are your best people, providing all of the nuance and all of the pieces that you must know in order for it to work as you modularly release things. That doesn't mean the continuous improvement people are not involved. They are watching, they are adding some of that data and insight, but they don't get to mold it until once the minimally viable infrastructure or offering is out and placed in their ownership. At that point, they get to start being more efficient and being more optimal. It also means, though, that our continuous improvement people realize that nothing lasts forever, and we are going to have to look at change as we go. So what does that start to look like? We talked a lot about this web and the layering of technology. We want to think in terms of making sure all of our technology collaborates with all the other technology. That's what delivers speed. We don't want to have to write customized pieces all the time in order to get it there, and we don't want it to take 20 years. So we'll start looking at some of the advanced pieces, such as smart contracts, which are digital libraries of information. These automatically trigger things to happen. Perhaps a payment needs to go out because the data shows that the conditions are met. Perhaps notices need to go out because a metric was violated. Perhaps there's tracking and tracing that's going on, and that again starts to tell the story that starts to hit milestones or other pieces of that contract that need to be activated. A lot of this can now be done in software, but you still need the people to make sure that the decisions the logic is making are the right decisions for your business, and they're structured correctly to deliver value. This is a lot of data, and we're looking at blockchain. And blockchain is really just a data organizational tool. Now, it's one location. It puts them all in selective blocks. It's called hashing when you create those blocks, and every block has a lock and a key combination to attach it to the rest of the supply chain. All you have to know right now is that it organizes all this data that's starting to come your way, and you still need to figure out which data needs to be shared, which data needs to be seen by other people, and how it's going to be transmitted. We can look at augmented reality, one of the many technologies that are coming on. If you've ever seen the Fidelity commercial where they had the virtual green line showing your path to prosperity and money, that's what these pieces are doing. They're showing you your path, an easier path to that top line revenue. We can use augmented reality to find where our inventory is without mistake and error in our warehouse. We can find out where to move it to correctly. All of this guided, and then all of the databases updated as we pull inventory, as we move the materials around. We can use it to have a set of experts behind the scenes, remote, talking into not only our own operators as they fix machinery, but perhaps that becomes a new offering because we don't have to have a tech service that's mobile. They can sit behind the scenes and guide people through as you're seeing what's going on, and they can be delivering information and other things to them through this technology. We've got drones where we've talked about now we don't have to go out and physically count inventory. We can send these guys out as many times as we want, usually once a day. We want it to be safe, so probably when people aren't there, and they're going to go count our inventory for us. And they're going to ask how many pieces are in each of those boxes and make sure the system knows where everything is located. Now our people can start to do the value add that customers will pay for. They're not going to pay for us to count inventory. Cobots, huge. You've probably seen the Kiva uh, YouTube videos where Amazon uses Kiva robots, Kiva that they now own, and it brings the inventory to the packer. You can then use the augmented reality to choose which bin has to be pulled out of. You can see all of the requirements for how many and which place in the packing crate or wherever, whatever you're doing, everything goes. We can use these in manufacturing. Typically, manufacturing had the big heavy-duty industrial strength robots. You could not have people sharing a space because you would be severely injured or killed. That is changing because we need to have this collaborative space between technology and people, even in our offices. What do people do that doesn't add value that they hate to do anyway? Can we put in a collaborative robot and take some of the burden off? In software, typically we think of robots as a combination of software and hardware. Software is using the word robots. In it, they mean automation of pieces with additional capabilities. So we'll talk about those in just a minute. We've also got machine learning, where the data that a machine generates and the quality information goes back to the machine, and they can adjust to improve the yield off of these machines, to improve performance, optimize how they're being used, and we link that all in with artificial intelligence. Now, I've been talking mainly in the production area. If we're talking about using it to support, not make, but support decisions, you want packages of artificial intelligence that are similar but made by different companies. Why? Because you want to get a range of understanding of the decision to be made. And that means it can't just be different companies, but it has to be companies that are different enough to embed different types of bias in, because everybody has some. But if you buy from a company where everybody looks the same as the next company, you're not going to get that difference and nuance that'll allow you to see the range of decision making that's possible. So what is it that we really are looking for here with all of this? Well, first of all, we want it to be safe. That's a lot of data running around over our electronics. We want to make sure that it's safe. We're not going to probably beef up our IT department to handle each and every one of these. Let's let the owners of the technology handle it in the cloud, and our IT department becomes the expert at integration and enunciating the requirements of what those technologies have to do, because we are their customer they must serve. They also map out all of the integrations and what is being sent where so that we can move fast if anything starts to break. We're also making sure that everything is chosen and designed to deliver the value that we must deliver to our customers. Once again, a lot of data, so let's switch something around here. Let's put blockchain in the middle because we've got a lot of data. This is a centralized database. Instead of using ERP for reports and all the data collection squished into the way it wants and needs it, going out to cloud-based systems now, we can use our blockchain as the data reservoir and feed that into our ERP systems for that scheduling and all the other important pieces that it does. That same data is then available to us, and we can add one other piece to our knowledge bank. We've talked about, or you may know digital twins from the product side. we can do the exact same thing for our entire, not only internal supply chain, but our extended supply chain, so that we can see what's going on and get the understanding of where the problems are and start to address them in a proactive way, not wait and react to them. So this is part of the layering that's done, and it's done in concert with the strategy. This is handled and owned by the tactical areas. But let's face it, many of us as larger companies won't be able to handle the smaller supply chain base, or they won't be able to handle this type of technology. They don't have the money, they don't have the personnel. How in the world do we begin to link up all of those pieces? And this is where we talk about layering. So this is just a quick high level set of processes. We're going to bring in raw materials just in time. We're going to manufacture those raw materials just in time and then send out that product just in time. The customer is going to inspect to make sure that it is approved. And as soon as it's approved, then we can charge for it. We can invoice. But we only invoice once per month because that's a manual part. It's not done just in time because we're small and we have to do this efficiently somehow. So then we've got to wait for everything to come in. But if we get rid of the manual here and make it easier for the person to be able to send out those invoices or perhaps electronically do that, we can use what's called robotic process automation. And this is purely software. And in the beginning, it's just purely a software replacement for what you're doing. However, as the prime, you can start to say, working with you, I want to see this data in this format because that fits into my systems, and we can start to automate then this entire process. I can then start to pay you immediately. You don't have to wait 30 days anymore because I've got other pieces tied in as long as I get this piece of data from you. From there, the robotic process automation is not limited to just what is the one-to-one not transformation, but conversion. It can go out, think of this in an HR point of view. It can go out and search all those social media and other media sites to bring back information about qualified candidates that then you have at your disposal to be able to make the decision on and to be able to bring them in and have an understanding of their background and where they're coming from. It doesn't have to all be internal to your business. This is the first step that then allows you to help the supplier build in a modular way to link more closely into your supply chains, as well as build their capacity and get money for them. So it's a win-win on all sides, not just them providing something, but both of us winning. So as we look at this transformation, we want to make sure that all of this technology and all of this linking together is not just for our internal use. There are rules that we need to follow, and they all focus on the customer. We have to make it very simple for people to do business with you. And that starts to talk to our supply base as being our customers, right? Because they're getting data from us. We have to make sure that it's easy for them to read and that we're linking to them in a way that makes sense. As well, we have to make it simple for customers, especially for B2C, to do business with us. We've all gotten these unbundled invoices and then had to make 100 different phone calls to figure out what's going on and to contest certain things. We've all had to go through multiple layers of customer service because no one's allowed to make a decision. That's not what makes it easy for people to spend money with you. We're building all of this support and infrastructure, as well as then the processes and the people abilities and capabilities to be able at each step of the way, whether we're supplying something through the enabling technology or supplying some information through the person, we're making it easy for the customer to do business with us and spend their money with us, which means we've put up a barrier to them leaving us. At any time, 69% of your customers are looking to jump ship, and 80% of them will do so the first time you mess up. So we've got to get this right. Again, we're back to the nuance of what is it that makes it simple for them, in their opinion, not in ours. So as we look at this, we start to get in deeper into this innovating, disrupting, and transformation. And that's where we start to talk a little differently. This is where the management by performance comes in. Now, we've always talked about, or at least for a number of years, management by objective. That's what a lot of the executives are now measured on. You get this, this, and this in line, and you get the bonus, you get the promotion, you get the whatever it is. That doesn't mean that they're driving things in a way that supports the customer base or makes you more money, unfortunately. So performance ties in the customer base and the top line. It means, as an example, that now that we've got people working from home, instead of tracking what they're doing with software, which gives you more information than any manager ever wanted to know or could ever look through, we're going to replace it by performance metrics that are based on the strategy. And we're going to explain and train that in. And we're going to explain and train what the deliverables are that they must deliver in a set amount of time. And they know the performance metrics that must be met. And we're going to give them the definition of done. When are you finished and can go on to the next piece? And when is this incomplete? And everyone has agreement so that now, why track and trace? If you're getting stuff done on time and to the spec, that's what you need. If you're not, then you need to either go back, relook at the training, perhaps the person's in the wrong job, or perhaps it was a bad hire and you need to change your hiring so that you only get in the people who can handle this type of situation. Don't know, there are a lot of variables. You want to keep at all times, whenever possible, the knowledge of your company in your company. So you don't want to just replace people. You want to see where they can add the most value and feel most comfortable providing this. So another example, as people are working from home, they're going to very soon say, you know what? I'm using my stuff to enrich you. We need to have an agreement here. If you want me to carve out space for your business, then something needs to happen. If you want me to be able to be on the computer and on systems, you need to give me the required equipment, whether that's a computer and a printer or video cameras or whatever it is to do my job. Because then the space is yours, the equipment is yours, and I'm not having to pay to provide you with that. You are going to be back there thinking, okay, so I've got these facilities, people are working from home. It looks like we're getting the work done. In fact, people work 3 hours a day more when they get to work from home and when they know what is expected of them. So we've got asset savings by not having to have all of these facility costs. Now, granted, you're not going to move your manufacturing and move the inventory from one home to another. Some things must stay on site. But there's a lot that can be moved home. And that actually started way back in the 80s. COVID pushed it forward. So if you take those savings that you've gotten from your assets, and now your employees are saying, hey, you know, not only the required equipment, but the insurance companies are saying, oh, well, you know, you have to be careful in case something happens, who's liable for it? Well, you provide an agreement. I'm going to provide you a certain amount of money. It ends up, when you add it all together, being no more than the facility savings that you just got from your asset, but you get to go buy a new desk or a standing desk or a Herman Miller chair or a whatever it is that's going to make your home office safe and productive for you. I'm not going to dictate this part to you. You're going to sign on the agreement that you are now accepting that all of this, the residual risk is going to you. I am not a legal scholar. You would have to go check this out with a lawyer. But now we're sharing the risk. I'm giving you money. I'm expecting you to be able to build because, yes, I understand. I am taking part of your home and turning it into the workplace. But now there are certain things that you're accepting as well by working from home. Whatever those end up being, you have to think through what it looks like, not just the emergency situation that we enabled and people have been working in. It may have to change. So what are some of the cultural changes that we need? Let me take a look at my time. Okay, I'm good. People are treated as valued professionals at our company. We're not tracking and tracing. We're giving them things with requirements and we expect them to meet it. These are professionals. Many of the professionals have college degrees or they have huge amounts of experience. They know how to do the job. Do it. Get me all of the pieces that I'm looking for on time, to spec, and to the quality that we're expecting. So we're providing value. Let's take another look at how our workplace may change. We may decide to job share. So let's look at a management situation. And instead of having one manager working 12, 14 hours a day and being exhausted for years on end, let's look at sharing that job. What is it that sharing that job would do? And we have to look at the costs as well. Well, we do get more performance. People aren't exhausted all the time. We've got two different people. We can cover more hours, not 12, 14 at a time. Hopefully we're taking it back. Let's say we're taking it back to 30 hours a week, three 10-hour days, two people each. You've got 6 days covered. Each person would make a little less than they would normally make, but you've got more talent expense here. However, there are other pieces in here. You've got the ability to cover and scale more. If you now all of a sudden need people to start covering 12-hour days, they're already there. They know it. If you need to expand to 7 days a week, you can expand. People can come to an agreement. If someone leaves, you've got someone to cover who's already trained. It does mean that you're going to have more communication. There's going to be training needs so that you can develop the teamwork and the communication that is needed. There's going to have to be more digital tools, platforms, and systems to support all of this. But at the end of the day, you're constantly building not only the succession planning and continuity, but the career paths of people. And you're enabling quality choices from a variety of choices now, not just one. So this is constant. We are moving out of a job situation and into a career situation. But also with COVID, we now have access to talent anywhere in the world, and they don't have to move between states, nor do they even have to move between countries. That means great talent, which always rises to the top, is going to be sought everywhere. How do we keep them? Well, it's this work-life balance, and we just brought it in. We embedded all of the pieces that usually we have a separate initiative for. But by designing our work differently, we can get the work-life balance that's being sought while also having the capacity and the desire when necessary to expand. And we're building in mentorship and sponsorship. This isn't just willy-nilly done. You're actually choosing people who can handle all of these types of pieces because you're looking to build not just these people, but everyone under them as well. And you're building a barrier to them exiting. So how in the world do we start to look and find all of this talent so that they can have a career with us, not just a job? And I want to take you to a McKenzie piece. How are you likely to outperform your peer? They looked at gender first, and they said, out of the 4 quartiles, the top quartile that had at least 30% women in their leadership and executive teams, as well as flowed throughout their entire business, they outperformed by 25% the bottom tier, which was the laggards. They are not going to do diversity, no matter what. They're very happy with the way they've got things going. But look at that financial performance. It's not going to take long before your shareholders want to know why you're leaving money on the table. But let's look at another piece. This now embeds gender in it, and we're looking across races as well as gender. And we're looking at leaving 36% of the financially available money that could go on your top line on the table because you're not transforming the way the modern strategies need you to. Why do they need you to? Because it's nuance. It's understanding those new customer segments from their point of view. It's understanding what it takes to move in a certain way. That is not contained by any one demographic. It's going to take us all working collaboratively together in order to get there. Now, we can say, well, fine, things are going, what does this really look like? What if we squish down the effect of the outperformance on top by combining it with the top three? Well, notice in 2019, and looking only at gender, you're still outperforming by 19%. That's money left on the table for your business. That shareholder pleasure left on the table, right? With gender and ethnicity, you're leaving 27% on the table. So even if we diminish the outperformance, there's still continued outperformance. And if we look at minimizing the impact of not having diversity at all, does that change things? No, you're still lagging behind. So it's not just adding technology. It's adding people, it's adding nuance, it's adding the strategy that collaborates all together to enable this holistic transformation throughout your business. And that's what keeps your talent in and attracts the millennials and Gen Zers, as well as anyone else who is looking for a holistic environment. So we're looking at these types of change, and it's got to be embedded into our culture. I'm going to go through and take a few questions now. I see my flashing chat box, so let me take a look at what you've got for me. All right, I've got one coming up, and it says, well, how do we get our supply base on board? Well, first of all, this can be very scary to your supply base. Remember, we've just come out of a time when we've been pushing on them constantly for price decreases. They're going to look at us skeptically when we say, you know, we're here to help you link into our supply chain. So we're going to have to make it very easy for them to understand. We're going to have to do a lot more sharing, a lot more communicating, and we're going to have to do a lot of the upfront work to get it so that it's easy for them to start to join us as we begin to pull pieces through and to get them on board. And we're going to have to show them success, not just our success anymore, but their financial success too, because this has to affect everyone's top lines. And then, like I said before, the transformation goes after that top line enlargement, you know, the expansion. When you get into continuous improvement, they begin to add that bottom line savings and efficiency, and your sales make sure to protect the margin. Okay? And that, like I said, has to flow through our entire supply chain. Here's another one from Joan. We've been slowly implementing new technologies. Does this mean that all of our work must be redone? No, it does not. With this caveat, if you've started pulling in technologies in order to just make you more efficient and more optimized, does that provide value to your customer when you add the process layers into it? If it doesn't, then you spend a lot of money and you're not going to get any reward for it. You must look at what value it delivers to your customers, as well as how easy it is to link up to the rest of your supply chain in order for it to be of value. So you may be able to just go in with a different set of eyeballs and look at it and tweak it so that it works, or you may have bought the wrong technology based on the real values, and you do have to replace pieces of it. Remember, we're not in continuous improvement yet. At this point, this is the radical change. We're trying to get to the 80% minimum viable infrastructure or offering, and usually it's both at the same time now, that our customers will reward us for, not that we're going to pat ourselves on the back for. And that's a very different way of looking at things. And again, the nuance of the new markets that we want to enter, that's captured by having different viewpoints at the table. And that's the only way you're going to adequately capture it as well as monitor it. You may be able to hire someone to come in as a consultant once and get you on the correct road, but you need someone there all the time. Remember, strategy is continuously monitored and adjustments have to be continuously made. Here's a question from Nazmul. I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. How can a supply chain management professional, how can they train and build their skills to fight in the post-COVID world? Great question. One, you have to be open to change. You're going to have to spend time familiarizing yourself with the different tool sets, not becoming an expert in the beginning, but just understanding what they are. When I created that web of technologies, did you understand them the way I said them before I mentioned them? You want to understand from the high level view because they're going to be talked about, and you're going to want to have at least an understanding of what the potential is that could be brought into your business. As well, you want to start looking at some teamwork. If you're not familiar with how to get through the piece where most people fail, which is the storming part of teamwork, uh, you're not going to be able to collaborate correctly. The storming piece is where a customer walks off in a huff because they didn't know how to work with you to get to that collaborative solution side, even though you were willing to. The storming piece is when a supplier gets ticked off because you're not listening to them and sending them stuff the right way that they can use it, and they don't know how to communicate back to you. You're going to have to negotiate through those things, and everything now is a negotiation. So I would also learn some negotiation. I just was teaching advanced negotiation skills to procurement personnel in a defense contractor because it's no longer transactional. Everything is relationship. We have to know how to form those. So you've got your negotiations, your teamwork, your understanding of the high level technologies, and you want to start to figure out what level of uncertainty you feel comfortable with, because that will help you either place yourself in the right location when the transformation starts to come in, or you can develop some skill sets to be able to handle uncertainty. Because what a transformation expert does is they look at all the uncertainty and they start to see patterns in it. And that starts to develop the organizational infrastructure, and the patterns start to build in modular ways into this piece, this transformation that we're building. And that's part of it. You can get that through the certifications. ISCEA does have a supply chain manager certification. There are other places that you can go to start to handle uncertainty, or at least understand the risk that's involved. I'm hoping that gives you a place to start. I am being told it is now 10:59. I will answer any other questions that do come in. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Please, the biggest thing I want you to walk away with is that you can do this. You have a place in this. You just need to know the moving parts, and not to the detail that an expert would, but feel comfortable being able to talk about them in a conversation. That's going to set you up to be ready to start to begin getting into this transformation. If you have any questions, please contact me at cynthia@processstrategysolutions.com, or you can contact ISCEA directly through their global desk at iscea.com email. Have a wonderful week, and let me know how you're doing in your transformation. Best of luck.